also raining. But the fact that you guys are here shows that you have responded to the call for action. I am Assemblywoman Diana Richardson. I proudly represent the communities of Crown Heights, Prospect Leftis Gardens, and East Flatbush. I was elected in 2005, and now, well, listen, we're still here. I want to thank you guys so much for coming out today, because for me, as an elected official, I am been charged by you guys and elected by you guys to represent you. Often at times, we can kind of feel like we are in a fight by ourselves. But your presence here today gives me comfort and it gives me courage to continue to forge forward. We are here today for a monthly meeting that we have titled Civic Minded. This is where we share information with the community about important things that are happening in the community and just things that you, as the average everyday citizen, should know. You see, the more you know about the community and the more you understand how things work, the better you are able to advocate for yourself. And so that is what Civic Minded is about. It's about informing you and letting you know what is going on so that you can be aware and be a part of the process. This month's meeting, and I should say that we meet the fourth Saturday of every month right here in this location, okay? This month's meeting has been dedicated entirely to the Bedford Union Armory. Now, the Bedford Union Armory is a massive development that is in our district, and it is public property. Let me ask you a question. Does everybody realize that the rents in our community are rising? Does everybody in this room realize that development is happening at an expeditious rate? You look left, there's a crane. You look right, there's a new building, correct? But what is happening is that this housing is being built on private property. And when someone, like let's say this gentleman up front, purchased a property, I, as an elected official, nor you, can tell him what to build. And this is why we are having all of this development happening, and the rents are just skyrocketing out of order. But this Bedford Union Armory, this is not private property. The Bedford Union Armory is public property, which means the city of New York can make an educated and a conscious decision about what to do with this development. Okay? So this is all in the hands of the city. Therefore, with homelessness being at 60,000 in the city of New York, there is a responsibility to do the right thing. But I don't want to get too deep. Thank you. I don't want to get too deep yet. I want to acknowledge the president of our New York City Comptroller, Scott Stringer. And I want to thank him so much for being here today. And I will give him an opportunity to speak in just 2 minutes. I want to acknowledge the presence of Bertha Lewis from the Black Institute. I want to acknowledge the presence of Donna Moston and Esteban, or I'm not going to say the last name, Jerome from the Crown Heights Tenants Union. I want to acknowledge the presence of Zach and Bosia from New York's Communities for Change. And I really want to recognize the presence of Richard Hurley from the Crown Heights Community Council. Today's meeting is different. Today's meeting is different. Today's meeting is different because there have been several meetings about the Bedford Union Armory. But I'm going to tell you something. They have not been telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help all of us. And so, as your elected official, I have been working in the background with all of the players, and we have a section called the players on your agenda, okay? And someone will do that portion. But as your elected official, I have been working in the background with the players. But I'm telling you that we are moving closer and closer to the wrong decision being made about the Bedford Union Armory. And at some point in time, if I remain silent, silence becomes betrayal. And as the people have elected me to represent, you didn't elect me to represent you to be silent. You represented me to tell you the truth. So I stand here today in that truth. I have hand-selected and worked with the people who helped, that I acknowledged earlier, because these are the grassroots organizations on the ground, doing tenant work, doing housing work, pushing for fairer and stronger rent laws with stronger tenant protections, and on a host of other campaigns throughout the city, like raising the minimum wage. I mean, I pick progressive people who I know would keep it real. We have heard enough of the fluff, and this is not what this meeting is about. So I'm encouraging everyone to listen carefully at everything that is being said here today. We are not only going to give you information, but this is a call to action. There will be action steps that we need to take after this meeting to ensure that this project goes right. The Bedford Union Armory is almost an entire square New York City block. This project is too big to lose. So without further ado, I ask our New York City Comptroller, Scott Stringer, to bring us some greetings. I just want to acknowledge in spirit the presence of our Congresswoman Yvette Clarke. Yes, shout out to Congresswoman Yvette Clarke. As well as to acknowledge that Senator Jesse Hamilton will be on his way, but he took his son this morning for specialized high school testing. Remember, we're parents too, right? And to also acknowledge the presence of Richard Burry, who's here from Borough President Eric Adams' office. So thank you so much. So yes, I'm standing here today, but know that there are so many players that is involved in this process. I would like to call up now Mr. Richard Hurley from the Crown Heights Community Council, an organization which he will tell you about that represents several block associations in the immediate area of the Bedford Union Armory, as well as his organization has been leading the way with several meetings as it pertains to the Bedford Union Armory.
And so I want everybody give her a hand, please. We have been in this fight for a long, long time, and it's come down to this. But I was asked by Diane to just give you guys a little bit of history, and then you don't know where you're going until you know where you've been. So this hasn't always been Crown Heights. It was called Crow Hill, and this is a very important piece to this puzzle. This used to be an agricultural land, all of Brooklyn. In 1609, Henry Hudson came here, you see, and it was all woods and bush. So the Nyack Indians and the Canarsie Indians, they already had the imprint of roads and pathways in Brooklyn. We had tobacco, we had corn, and fish. That was Brooklyn. And so let me fast forward a little more. What happened was, let me see how she do this. Well, what happened was the Dutch West Indies Company the Dutch, their economy went down, so they resorted to slavery, the slave trade. So they went to the West Indies and brought a lot of the West Indians here. And so when they got here, they were not allowed to be on the land. They had to have them somewhere. So they put them on this hill, Crow Hill, because Crow Hill wasn't good fertile land. So they put all of the blacks, whether you were a runaway slave, whether you were an indentured servant, or free black, you lived on this hill. So it was called Crow Hill. In 1873, Brooklyn Eagle interviewed a police officer. And the police officer said, well, it was called Crow Hill because of the crows up in the bush. But that's not true. So they went with that. But the true history, when they say history, it's his story, but it's his story. The true history was, this is Crow Hill, to let everyone know that this is where the blacks belong. Now, the first penitentiary in Brooklyn, Kings County Penitentiary, the nickname of the penitentiary was called Crow Penitentiary. And on the uniforms of all the prisoners, they had a crow claw to indicate and let everybody know this prison was for black people. The very first prison here in Kings County, called Crow Penitentiary. And a lot of blacks were arrested for little or nothing. And they went into that penitentiary, and I'm telling you people, they never came out. They never came out of that penitentiary. That place on Crown Street and Rogers Avenue, Rogers and Nostrand, Crown and President, people are buried there. It's a burial ground. So that's very important. So let's go a little further. What year was it? I don't know. 1848. They built the penitentiary. The penitentiary stood from 1848 to 1907. They changed the name from Crow Hill, and I think it was 1916 when they built Crown Street, and they put an N on it. So instead of saying Crow, they went to Crown. And then, of course, they named this neighborhood Crown Heights. Now the penitentiary was here already. People were the blacks were being arrested. So what did they do? They built an armory on Atlantic and Bedford Avenue. That armory was built there. They'll tell you all kinds of things. But of course, everybody has their own choice of history. But it was to keep the blacks on the hill. Make sure that they don't come down with the rest of it. So that armory was built. But in 1903, they decided to build an armory here, the Bedford Union Armory, in 1903. Now, of course, it was the Dick Militia Act. That's how the National Guard began. So there was unrest all over the United States. So they put the armory were here as the police, for policing, basically. So they definitely had to put an armory here, on the hill. Of course, as I'm saying it, they keep the blacks in their place. You see? So we have a rich history here in Crown Heights as it relates to Brooklyn. In fact, the oldest road ever is right on Nostrand and Montgomery, and it's called Grove Road. Now that was the road that went all the way from Canarsie to the edge of the river. And when they got there, what did they do? They took the ferry and went over to what is now known as Wall Street. And the very first commodity ever sold on Wall Street were slaves. We were the first comers. So there's a rich history that affects, the whole United States. So anyway, this is the history of Crow, and the word Crow, and Crow Hill. So we have to get rid of that crowbar on Franklin Avenue. The bad thing about this guy on Franklin Avenue is he doesn't even care. We told him that Crow is a hurtful, painful reminder of our dark history. I gotta say this, we as black folks are really sick and tired of the history being twisted. Because Columbus never discovered America. See, and but I'm not saying that to say anything racial or nothing like that. We have to talk the truth. Crown Heights was where black people were, and we still are here. And they're trying to move us out. And in fact, it's so outrageous. The guy has the nerve to open up a bar called Crowbar. That's so disrespectful. You know Heckle and Jekyll on TV. They had the black voices. You know Jim Crow.
Okay, Armory.
How about each Crow? So let's get back to the Armory.
I had to bring it back.
Give me back. I'm going to start preaching it. All right. So, but anyway, this of course was built for the state militia to keep the unrest, the Armory, the Bedford Union Armory. And let's fast forward a little bit more. You come down to the 2000s. The Armory was used for filming, and you have a lot of film companies coming here and making films here in Crown Heights. But in 2013, the state recognized that it could no longer financially afford to maintain the Armory in 2013. So what happened is that they put out an RFP, and no, they did not. They gave the Armory to the city. That's how the city got it. But when the city got it, the city said, well, we can't afford it either. So they immediately put out an RFP. They put the RFP out in December. In January, they were accepting proposals.
Hold the mic to the mouth.
They were accepting proposals. Thank you. They were accepting proposals. We, at Crown Heights Community Council, we thought that was very suspicious. If you have an RFP in December, how is it that the developers had proposals prepared in January? So now, all of a sudden, just from the outset, there was something wrong here.
Pay attention.
So, what I decided to do with Prime Heights Community Council, we interviewed 7 developers, because we wanted to find out what was going on. How do you have it takes a couple of years, or maybe it takes some studying to put a proposal together. They had it in a month. And then on top of that, they made us wait 2 years before they selected a developer. But what makes it worse, they say they were listening to the community. They were not. The community made it clear that we did not want the Armory sold in any fashion. Any way, any how. We told them. So how is it? And we, by the way, I told you we spoke to the developers, Prime Heights Community Council. We did that. We told them the same thing. So how is it that a proposal came through, and in the proposal they conveyed President Street, the entire President Street is being conveyed to make townhouses? How do you do that? How do you do that?
How much do they cost?
I'm not quite sure.
$1 million a piece.
Say that again.
So he's speaking about the President Street side of the project. I'm just chiming in where I know you need to know. They are proposing 30 to 45 condominiums. That portion of the building will be sold, and each condominium is $1 million a piece. Raise your hand in this room if you can afford that. Okay, that's why we're here today.
So anyway, it started off kind of suspicious. It's still suspicious, and what's suspicious about it is when Slate pulled out, they were forced out. They didn't pull out. They was actually forced out. So when Slate was forced out, Carmelo Anthony, a month later, he pulled out the deal. Okay? Why is it when people are coming out, Slate said that they sold their interest in the Army. How you selling an interest in the Army? You don't have it yet. So that's suspicious. And the other thing is, if you sold your interest in the Army, you sold it to whom? I heard it was a Chinese company that they sold it to. But they're selling this is government property. This is our property. Who? We need to know. We still have not received the financials from the developer. I've been demanding it. We want to see what these numbers look like, what they're actually doing. So if you're in a partnership with a developer and one of you pulls out, that has to be a financial strain, doesn't it? There has to be something among. So the sensible thing here is to pull back the RFP, pull back the proposals, and do it all over again. So what we're calling for is a new RFP, and we want to be at that table so the community can have an input in those requests for proposals, those RFPs. That's what it is. So all I'm saying is that we stand as a community with no trust with the city. I have no trust with the developers. I think something is amok, and we're not at that table. Because I'm telling you, when they first did it, a month later they had those proposals, this thing was in planning before the city even got their hands on it. And we were left out the loop. So I think all of these meetings that are happening, and now they have the email out. The Bedford court, they have the emails out. It's all front. It's all icing, that kind of nonsense. It's not real. What's real is what we're doing here. What's real is Diane Richardson. What's real is Walter Mosley. What's real is Jesse Hamilton. They got together. So now, I got to tell you, now when these guys got together, our elected officials got together and made a comment that we will not take it. We want to see the financials.
It want to pay for itself. So we as elected officials said, you know what? Show us the financials on how you're going to allow this project to pay for itself so we can see the economics that you're working with. And maybe, I don't know, as a state elected, maybe I can fight for some subsidies. Maybe I can fight for something. But I don't know what to fight for if I don't have the financials. And I want to tell you, up until today, no elected official has it. Again, I want to remind you, this is government property, yet the elected officials still do not have the financing plan for the massive government public land development that is getting ready to go down here. Something isn't right. Houston, we have a problem. Next, I'm going to bring up Esteban and Aaliyah. Esteban is from the Crown Heights Tenants Union. Aaliyah is from New York Communities for Change. And both of them will go over the scope of the project and exactly what is being proposed right now.